On the cover of our bulletin this morning is this picture of the sower, and I thought that would be a good start. But then with the warm temperature here, I think it's harvest season, about July or August afternoon in a wheat field, and the only thing different is the sun is beating down on you. It's much different than what we are experiencing. At least we have a little breeze, and it's good to see that some of you are using the bulletins for a fan, and that all helps us. And so we will. I will go on and share the message that I've prepared, and pray that God will bless us even in these conditions. I know the word gets through one way or another. Oh God, you are our help and our strength. You are very present in each moment of our lives. You give us new life, and you do inspire us with your holy word. Amen. Then Jesus said, "This is what God's kingdom is like. It is though someone scatters seeds on the ground, and then sleeps and wakes, the seed sprouts and grows, and whenever the crop is ready, the farmer goes out to cut the grain because it's harvest time." You and I can change our neighborhoods by planting one seed at a time, and the seeds we plant are seeds of love. But wait a minute, I need to go further than that and say you and I can change our world by planting seeds of love, and we are doing that at St. Matthew's. We're reaching out to our neighbors far and near with our various mission projects. Things growing suggests that God has energy. And the message that is spoken in things that are growing is that our God is a loving God who keeps everything in order and who has a beginning and has an end. Everything that is planted, the time will come. One who plants, identified by Jesus in Mark chapter 4, as a farmer scatters seed on the ground. He wakes and sleeps, soon discovering that the seed sprouts and grows. And yet what is required are more days of waking and nights of sleeping. Just waiting for things to grow just doesn't happen. Jesus says that the day of harvest will come, and the farmer must be ready unless the crop fails or goes to waste. That could happen as well. I want to suggest that we go back to recognize that there's one important step prior to scattering the seed. The hymn which we just sang, "We plow the fields and scatter," and in the picture you can see in the background a farmer who is just doing the plowing. Plowing can be hard work, especially if the farmer is facing the huge task of overturning the soil row by row with a horse-drawn plow. And I look at this picture of the farmer plowing, and I think, does this plowing take place from sunup till sundown? Does plowing a field last more than a day? What is going on in the farmer's mind? Does he start counting the rows? Does he say, I just have a little bit more to go in this field and I'll be finished? Does he ever pause? Does he take a break? Does he have anything to drink? Does he have any food to eat? Maybe the task is just there and he wants to get it completed as fast as he can go. And then there's the sowing part of it. And some similar things come to mind as, might the farmer's arm be sore after grabbing into that bag over and over again? And if the field was not finished sowing in the one day, then the planting of seeds must be continued. And certainly you don't go out to sow on a day when there's a wind or a breeze. You want it to go directly in that range where you've dropped the seed. A farmer sowing a field of wheat the days prior to Thanksgiving knew without a doubt that the cold of winter was close at hand. I'm very much aware of this, having grown up on a farm in north central Pennsylvania and knowing these different seasons. And I found it always interesting how farmers could drive around on a Sunday afternoon and observe how each other's crops were doing. For some reason, they wanted to compare to see if everything was right on schedule. And there also is all that talk about, I wasn't able to plant my corn yet. We've had too much rain. And I see you have gotten yours in. There's all those differences that can occur. But I know the farmer has to have a strong faith and know that God will see these plants through the entire season. And there is a season of love made up of waiting. The hymn which we close our worship this morning talks about happening in the wintertime when the seeds of grain are buried, spending time in the dark earth. And we sing this hymn as a resurrection hymn, as an Easter hymn. But it speaks very much to the idea that those wheat seeds are there in the ground. The field is as dark, brown as it can be, almost forgotten. The snow has been on that field, perhaps some ice, and then it slowly melts, and all of a sudden, that field becomes green. And the hymn says, our hearts can become grieving. We become slow-moving. Sometimes we're grieving. We are in pain, waiting for that time to come back again. The wintry times in our lives cause us to be separated from God's love. And then comes the refrain in this hymn, love is come again, like wheat that springeth green. That is a special moment when you're a farmer and know that it is springtime. Your wheat is green, and now it's ready to grow on the top of the earth. However, for a farmer, there's excitement all through the season, and there is a time of waiting. And then about this time of the year, you look at that wheat field, it's no longer green, but it's yellow, and it's starting to get the amber color. And now God's love is yet at another point. It's not ready yet to harvest, or it wasn't ready in my experience. The wheat would be cut from the field with a binder, and the stalks would be tied into strings and would be laying out in the field, and then the farmer would have to go through the fields and make the shock of wheat. And I recall when my grandfather taught me how to make a shock of wheat, to gather 2 or 3 of the stalks and put them up here, and then gather some, quickly move and put some more over here and more over here. Well, the first several times it didn't work because the field was on a side hill. And that's mostly what we had up in our area. We had a few flat fields, but mostly with side hills. And the real side hills were used for pasturing the cattle. But anyway, it takes a while. And I thought about it, and those shocks of wheat have to remain in the field for a while till everything dries out. They're not ready to bring into the barn just yet. And then suddenly, it would be the day where we would begin to hear about thrashing. And that's when farmers would help each other. When they go out in the fields in the wagon and with the fork break those shocks apart, those sheaves apart, and start bringing them into the barn. And there the wheat would be separated, the grains of wheat would be separated, and the straw would be put in the straw mow. And what I enjoyed about it was farmer helping farmer, and it was a crew. This is your thrashing day. When your thrashing day comes, I'll be there. There was that togetherness. And I also remember the good meals that we had, as the farmers' wives would share a bountiful meal, realizing that the task was not easy. But in this, there was a bit of success and there was a bit of celebration. And then I would go to church, the little country church that I grew up in, and we would sing the hymn, bringing in the sheaves. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. Perhaps you know this hymn. It says, sowing in the morning, sowing seeds of kindness, sowing in the noontime and the dewy eve, waiting for the harvest and the time of reaping. We shall come rejoicing, bringing in the sheaves. A harvest completed. The grain, the wheat would be taken to the mill, be ground into flour, and the flour would be used for baking for the rest of the year. A harvest completed. Now a new year begins for the sower. Now it's time for you and I to live in the motion of God's love. Thankful for gifts, thankful for seasons, and thankful for seasons of God's love. Amen.